Hello everyone. Good afternoon from Jakarta, Indonesia. My name is Beni Suryadi from the ASEAN Centre for Energy. I am the host of our event today. As per the video that you just see, the ASEAN Centre for Energy, or ACE, is an intergovernmental organization that is representing the interests of the 10 countries in the Southeast Asia region on the energy cooperation. We are very pleased and honored to be invited to host a side event today as part of the UN Ministerial Thematic Forum for the high-level dialogue on the energy. On behalf of the team, I would like to welcome everyone to this important discussion. The Southeast Asia region rapid economic growth, growing population, and the pace of urbanization are driving a continuing rise in the energy demand. Meeting this rising demand is placing pressure on the energy system and challenging the policymakers to meet the energy needs while balancing commitments to global, regional, and national agenda on the climate change and sustainable energy. Decisive action by the region's policymakers is needed to decarbonize and expand the energy system sustainably, and to deliver modern energy service equitably, and to stimulate socio-economic development. The urgency of the sustainable energy transition has only become more pressing in light of the recent setback that nations have experienced due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Tracking the region's progress toward achieving target under Sustainable Development Goals, or SDG7, ensuring universal access to electricity and clean cooking, increasing the renewable energy share of the energy mix, and accelerating the energy efficiency serve to illuminate the trends and challenges leading up to 2030. Across all areas, the progress is evident. However, the progress between ASEAN member states, ASEAN countries, is highly varied, and the pace is somehow is also considered too slow in many cases to fully realize the 2030 vision. If the global climate objective of limiting 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature rise is to be realized, the share of renewable energy in the power system must expand rapidly, and the greater energy efficiency measure must be introduced. If ASEAN is to support the achievement of the SDG7 target, the aggressive measures are needed than the path set by the current policy. So this event will bring the discussion between the experts to identify the needed effort in escalating the progress and tackling the challenge of rapidly evolving the energy market. The focus of discussion is how to improve the robustness of the energy policy and planning in this region so that ASEAN can be a sustainable, equitable, and resilient energy community in reaching the SDG7 by 2030. So to kick off the discussion, I would like to invite Dr. Zulfikar Yurnaidi, Senior Officer of the Sustainable Energy, Renewable Energy, and Energy Efficiency Department of the ASEAN Centre for Energy, to deliver the scene-setting presentation on the SDG7 progress and projection in the ASEAN. Dr. Zulfikar will also be moderating our discussion today with our honorable panelists. Dr. Zulfikar, the time and screen are yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Benny, for the opportunity for me to be the scene-setter presenter and also the moderator for the panel session today. Just a quick housekeeping before we start. Basically, we would like to request all the panelists to turn off the camera and also microphone, and then I will call you before you can provide your intervention, inputs, and comments. And then please turn on your camera and also microphone. And then probably during the Q&A, all the panelists can also turn their camera at the same time. And for the audiences, please feel free to shoot your questions to the chat function in the Zoom during the presentation or after that. And then we will select some of the questions and address that to our panelists. Please to put also your name and institutions and to whom your questions is addressed whenever possible. Let's move to the next slide, please. So for the scene setting presentations in today, just 2 slides very briefly. Apologize for our panelists that we request you to not sending slides to us, and I have my own slides here, but we will try to keep today's session to be as interactive, as informal as possible. Next slide, please. Just a quick snapshot of the SDG7 progress in the regions. All of the information here are taken from the flagship publication of ASEAN Centre for Energy, supported as well by our colleague from the GIZ, which is the 6th ASEAN Energy Outlook, but also from our joint study with the UNESCO, the tracking SDG7 in the ASEAN region. So there are basically 3 SDG7 activities. The first one is in the universal access to electricity, but also to the clean cooking. In the electricity side, we see that the 5 member states already reached electrification, Brunei, Singapore, and several others, but there are still 17.7 million ASEAN households who have no access to electricity, with most challenges coming from countries such as Cambodia and Myanmar. But in our study, we found that even in the national target scenario, or we call it ATS, 100% electrification is possible by 2030. So we see a good progress in the electrification front. For the clean cooking, currently there are more than 100 million ASEAN people still use traditional biomass, in here including also kerosene in addition to wood. And even in the most optimistic scenario that we have in the AO6, which is the APAIC target, there are still challenges in achieving 100% clean cooking by 2030. Thus, we introduced what we call the SDG7 scenario that introduces stronger switch policy from the traditional biomass into LPG, biomass, biogas, and other clean cooking technologies such as electric stove. And with that, we see that it is possible to reach 0% of traditional biomass share in TPS by 2040. In a renewable energy front, we saw that the huge energy demand will be increasing, as mentioned by Benny in the opening session. But we see that the substantial increase of the renewable energy penetration. And in the ITS, which is the national target scenario, we see that the RE will grow to 8%, from 8% in 25 to 15% and 17% in 2030 and 2040, respectively in TFEC. Meanwhile, the FPS scenario will increase it even more, up to 26% in 2040. Similarly, in the energy efficiency, currently the regional target, we already achieved that, and we set a higher target of energy intensity. And with this, we see that the both ATS and the APS will support the achievement of energy efficiency target of the SDG7. Next slide, please. So with those initial targets achieved, challenged, or potentially achieved within our studies, it doesn't mean that it does not require enough effort. Some food for thoughts on how we can escalate the SDG7 progress, especially in the Southeast Asia. There are many, but I just pinpoint a few aspects that I thought important for us to discuss in today's session. The first is the in socioeconomic approaches. One of the issues in clean cooking is that clean cooking is basically a business endeavor. Like we are selling clean cooking, and people need proper socioeconomic incentives for them to really absorb and adapt into this clean cooking. So I think this is a very important, as well as in having these people-centered approaches. The job creation, the changes in energy transition, that's an important aspect for us to discuss. The second one is in the involvement of key stakeholders, not only in the policy sector, but also in the science or the academe, the business sector or the private sector, but also in a more broader area, the media, community, and the international organization. The third will be on how to break the silos between sectors. When we are talking about the SDG7, we cannot ignore the other SDGs. For example, SDG 13 in climate change. Another SDG poverty is very important for us to improve the last mile electrification, as well as others. So synchronizing and integrating all of these interests and having them into a concerted action will be very important. Last but not least is that the fact that a lot of countries, including those in the Southeast Asia, needs to have this short-term priority of economic recovery and how to balance this into the mid-long-term vision of sustainability. We have heard a lot of discussions about green recovery, but to be honest, it seems that the promises that we've seen in the beginning fall short. And this food for thoughts, I would like to go to the next slide, please. So for today's, we have a wide range of panelists to discuss this SDG7, various of it, electrification, clean cooking, renewable energy, energy efficiency. We have 4 panelists coming from different sectors, from the government, from the academia, from the private sector, but also from the international organization. So for panel discussion, we will invite each speaker to provide their inputs and comments to the scene setting presentation first, to introduce their work related to SDG7. And then once we have all speakers give their initial thoughts, we will move to the Q&A. And there are some questions prepared by moderator, but also we are invited all questions, all range of questions coming from the audiences through the chat function. Without further ado, I would like to invite our first panelist, Elis Heviati. She is the coordinator of Bioenergy Investment and Cooperations, the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources of Indonesia. She's have 20 plus experience in the energy sector and currently working in the clean cooking, which is also a very important and challenging sector of SDG7. Without further ado, time and screen is yours.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, you might start, Boris.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hello everybody. My name is Elis Heviati, as has been mentioned by the moderator. I would like just to give a brief about my daily routine. As a coordinator for bioenergy investment and cooperation, my job is to increase the investment and the capacity of bioenergy utilization, which include biomass, biogas, biofuel, as well as bioenergy-based power plant. As one of the renewable energy, bioenergy role is quite significant since it can substitute energy fossil in almost all related sector. For instance, biofuel can be used to substitute diesel oil and gasoline for transportation sector, and these have been implemented well in Indonesia. As for now, we already implement B30 for transportation sector. And also, biogas can be used to substitute natural gas. It can be used for domestic use as well as industrial purposes. While biomass can be used to replace coal for industrial and power generation. And also, biomass have been long used as traditional energy by people. And also, up to now, there are many people, especially in Indonesia, still depend on traditional biomass for their cooking in the household. And as for the sustainable development goal, since the adoption of the 2030 agenda, our government have been working hard to achieve the sustainable development goals. And for our ministry, achieving goal of SDG7, ensuring access to affordable, reliable, sustainable energy for all. It also become our main target since it is stated in our law of energy and also other related regulation. As we know that energy is the key enabler of development, and also it's essential input to economic growth. There are 3 main targets there are three main of our target in SDG7. First target is related to electricity ratio, electricity consumption per capita, and total of city gas network for household. The second target is renewable, is related to renewable energy mix, while the third target is related to primary energy intensity. Our national electrification ratio reached 90.2% in last year. It is below of our target of 100%. It's being mentioned that reaching 100% is quite impossible, but we try to reach that. But until now, there are still areas which has no access of electricity, especially in remote and eastern part of Indonesia. To increase rural electricity access, renewable energy will take an important role. This program will include develop mini grid using renewable energy local potential, such as communal solar PV, mini hydro, and also mini biomass power plant. Government also to provide solar home system, solar-based electric energy charging station, and also electrical power supply. And to reduce the consumption of liquid petroleum gas or LPG, which mostly comes from imported, we have an ambitious program to expand the gas network for household up to 4 million new connection in 2024. The target is not easy, considering, for instance, for last year, a lot of the budget had to be diverted to support the financing of COVID-19 pandemic. But in order to boost the investment, the government will offer private parties to get involved through the public-private partnership scheme. SDG7 and the Paris Agreement require a solution through a transition to a lower carbon, more equitable and cleaner energy system. Renewable energy efficiency will play a much broader role in the future and in the future of our energy system in order to achieve the 2030 target. Our national energy policy has targeted that the new and renewable energy resources should contribute about 23% from total primary energy mix by 2025. But last year, the realization reached about 11.2%. There are several measures taken by government to increase the share of renewable energy, which policy improvement will be the key to support the acceleration of energy transition, including but not limited to drafting new and renewable energy law, presidential regulation on renewable energy purchasing by PTPLN, and other related implementation policies. We also to conduct primary or final energy substitution by using existing technology, such as continuously the mandatory biofuel programs, covering biomass to substitute coal in existing coal-fired power plant, and also doing fossil primary energy conversion. It is a replacement of generation or conversion technology. We will some of diesel power plant or coal-fired power plant will be replaced with renewable energy power plant. Other program are biogas and also biomass pellets for cooking. And we try to increase the capacity of new renewable power plant to meet the new demand. This will be focused on solar power, since it is become more affordable now, and also relatively easy to develop, and also develop biomass briquette and pellet for agriculture drying, and also develop biogas. So basically, we are much aware of the presentation that just shown. We agree about the approach should be done in order to achieve the SDG7 goals. But we are aware there are so many challenges, but we try our best to achieve the goals. Maybe that's all from us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bu Elis. It's very interesting to hear the progress, especially in Indonesia, on the achievement of the SDG7. The challenges in electricity, probably good lessons for other countries, and the strategies in the peace scheme, energy substitution, and how to deal with this budget shift due to pandemic will be very important factors. I will leave the questions for in the Q&A, and I would like to move to panelists first. So I'd like to invite Marianne from the Energy Studies Institute, the University in Singapore. She's a research fellow there, and she's an expert in energy security, renewable energy technology development in Southeast Asia, as well as the renewable technology and society studies. Time is yours, Marianne. Thank you.
Yes, hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. First of all, thank you, ASEAN Centre for Energy, for hosting this fruitful event. I'm Marianne Quirapas, as mentioned, a research fellow at the Energy Studies Institute within the National University of Singapore. Our institute conducts research on energy studies and policies at the national, regional, and global levels, as well as implications of these energy-related policies. We promote discussion and advance collective understanding on issues related to energy policy development. So one of my current research works at ESI is looking at how energy-poor communities in developing countries like the Philippines adopt renewable energy technologies to achieve electrification, specifically for off-grid and remote areas. You know, as we know, Philippines is known for its beautiful beaches, shorelines, and resorts, as seen on my background. So this was taken from a nice island in Camotes, Cebu. But at the rear end of these beautiful sceneries are households and communities who only have 4 to 6 hours of electricity per day, or even no electricity access at all. One of the main challenges for rural electrification is to be more than a means to survive everyday lives, but to see electricity as an enabler to achieve long-term sustainable development. This is especially true for areas that could not be addressed by on-grid energy sources or where large-scale renewable energy project is not feasible. The key questions to ask, and maybe we can discuss this more later on, is that do these communities achieve long-term energy access or energy resilience for disaster-prone areas, and most importantly, sustainable energy that could benefit their socioeconomic needs? So studying community-based renewable energy projects and actually experiencing what we call as the island life during my fieldwork makes me realize 3 things. First, that the provision of clean and affordable energy sources is more than a hardware issue. This problem cannot just be addressed by simply deploying renewables in the communities and assuming that people will continuously use it. This means that any clean energy intervention should not only invest on the technology side of the project, but the people who will use and adopt these renewable energy technologies. Constant and quality engagement with the end users is needed. This means increasing their capabilities not only to use, but to actually manage and sustain the solar PVs towards sustainable livelihood or more productive use of electricity. This also challenges current renewable energy interventions to also invest in the processes and the people alongside the physical components of the project. This, we say, are the software and the orgware components of the RET adoption process. Second, policies or any type of community development intervention would need to define and distinguish how rural electrification and energy access are measured. whether by merely installing a distribution system or, for example, electricity poles or wires, or what we call in the Philippines power extension to the household, or having actual electricity for 24 hours. So if so, what does having an access to energy means? Is it having 4 to 6 hours per day for their basic energy needs, or having equal access to power to improve their everyday lives and to achieve sustainable development? In terms of type of technology, distributed energy systems like standalone solar PV or hybrid renewable energy technology system or microgrid are more suitable in off-grid communities that have relatively low-income households compared to the large and centralized RETs. These households are mostly living on a day-to-day basis, and their ability to control their electricity consumption would be helpful in their allocation of everyday expenses. However, the main caveat of the effectiveness of these distributed energy systems is that it should be also accompanied by decentralized management or organizational structure located within the community. And finally, from a disaster preparedness and recovery perspective, there is little consideration over how clean and renewable energy technologies could improve the vulnerable rural areas' energy resilience. Governments or renewable energy project developers and even electricity providers could tap off-the-shelf and less costly renewable energy systems suitable and adaptive to typhoon-stricken areas. Carefully designed distributed energy systems or standalone systems should be accompanied, as I mentioned a while ago, with decentralized institutions to manage and sustain the RET systems. So I'd keep my introduction short and would be open to more discussions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marianne, for the very concise and insightful comments. I really agree that the sustainability and resiliency should be the new mantra of the SDG7 development, not only in having access, but also on how it has the component of disaster preparedness, as you mentioned at the last, and also on development of the software component of the renewable energy, energy efficiency, and other SDG7 aspects. I will go back to you in the Q&A session. For now, I would like to call the next panelist quickly, Logan K, which is the director and the CEO of the UPC Renewables Vietnam. He has over a decade experience in the renewable industry, including leading or contributed to the development of over 1 gigawatt of wind and solar projects across East Asia and South Asia. I would like to request to be as concise as possible due to the limitation, but the current time and screen is yours, Logan.
Thank you very much for the warm introduction, Zulfikar. So I'll introduce UPC Renewables first. We are a independent power developer, constructor, and operator of renewable energy projects, primarily wind power. And we've been around for about 30 years in over a dozen countries, within ASEAN specifically operating in the Philippines, Indonesia, and Vietnam. And basically we go find where it's windy or where it's sunny, and start to develop a project and then bring those projects into fruition. And as a part of SDG7, I think it's very valuable to note that the private sector has been able to do quite a lot in the ASEAN region just in the past 5 to 7 years. If you look back to maybe the 2012, 2013 timeframe, there weren't too many projects that were being built in the ASEAN region, and it has just totally changed in the past 3 to 4 years, as well as the interest globally in the ASEAN region and how renewable energy as a sector can grow here. And if you take, for example, some of the success stories that have come about, for example, Vietnam, the country I'm currently in, if you look back to solar power just several years ago, in 2016, there were something like 100 megawatts or so in the entire country. And now there are between 15 to 20,000 megawatts. And a very short amount of time, a huge amount of investment has come forward. And principally, that's the private sector when it is given a chance to operate and a very clear goal of what wants to be achieved by society. The capital can be put to work and be put to work in very effective ways. And that's very, very true. And so what I'd say is that I see a very bright future for the ASEAN region in terms of clean energy. And it's principally driven by the fact that the rest of the world has been, and as ASEAN as well, green energy has grown so dramatically over the last decade that the cost of renewable energy is no longer really needs to be incentivized heavily. It was incentivized heavily from its infancy over the last several decades, and that has transpired into just being very, very commercially attractive. You find a lot of businesses buying green energy in decentralized markets, not necessarily because it's green, but also because it can be the most commercially attractive. Moving forward into the next 10 years, the next 9 years to try and meet our targets under the SDG7, I think we're going to see several trends that will help us a lot in our goals, and that includes storage. Storage is becoming much cheaper. That means, you know, battery technology and solar, pumped hydro and other storage technologies, so that the integration of renewable energy and the burden that it can cause on electricity grids should smooth out over the next 10 years. We foresee a huge change in the way that green energy is utilized by the grid, and the cost has come down so much that now many projects are being planned to actually turn solar and wind power into hydrogen and to other fuel sources, which can provide 24/7 power through energy conversion. So I think, you know, if you look at what has happened over the last years, for example, UPC Renewables, we just announced about 1 month ago in the Philippines that we're starting construction on a 160 megawatt project, which does not need a long-term contract. We're actually just selling competitive into the competitive, what they call the wholesale electricity spot market price. And every hour we compete with any other fuel. So we're getting very competitive, and I think you're going to see a huge amount of investment in $1 trillion in Asia Pacific over the next decade. And I think the private sector can contribute a lot, as long as it's given the proper framework of what wants to be achieved and a clear regulatory sort of set of standards as to what needs to be followed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Logan. I love how you paint the pictures of the renewable energy in the region in a very positive way. We really love to see the solar revolution in Vietnam and the strong role of the private sector over there. I think I do agree that for private sector, probably the most important thing is in the clear regulatory framework, how to set the goal in very clear way, not changing quickly, and give this a sense of stability for the private sector to really move the gear and push the renewable energy, as well as probably others SDG7 sectors such as energy efficiency moving forward. Noted as well the trends that I think will push the renewable energy forward as well, such as the storage, hydrogen, as well as others. Thank you very much. And I would like to move to the next panelist. We have Rizky Fauzianto, which is a good friend of ASEAN Centre for Energy. He is the team lead of the AGEP, or the ASEAN German Energy Program. He has extensive experience in the sustainable energy, including renewable energy and energy efficiency through AGEP, as well as other projects in the GIZ. Without further ado, I would like to give the screen to Rizky Fauzianto.
All right. Thank you very much for your kind introduction, Masul. A very good morning, afternoon, and evening to all of us. First of all, I would like to say thank you again to AGEP and also Escalating for inviting me here. I am Rizky Fauzianto from GIZ, a German International Development Agency. I am currently leading a project called ASEAN German Energy Program that has been active in the ASEAN region for the past 14 years. In the topics of sustainable energy and energy transitions. In regards to the SDG, actually activities under our projects are not only related to SDG 7, but also on SDG 13, which is climate protection, SDG 17, partnership for the goals, and also SDG 5, the gender equality, particularly on SDG 7. And in addition to support the ASEAN ASEAN Plan of Action on Energy Cooperation, or the APAEC, which is the second phase, has been endorsed in the ASEAN Ministerial meeting last year. Our activities have addressed all 5 targets from 7.1 until 7.B in the SDG7. For example, as Joel has mentioned, one of our flagship activity with ACE on the ASEAN Energy Outlook from the 4th edition until the 6th edition, the latest was launched last year as well, will have to support the SDG target on increasing substantially the share of RE in the global energy mix and also to double the global rate of improvement in energy efficiency. As for the investment, R&D, and technology, these topics are also our focus in our projects, where we support ACE on developing R&D network on renewable energy in ASEAN for research institutions. We also develop several studies and recommendations on RE and E financing, and of course, event like coordination workshop among the players like ACE, international organizations, and development partners to strengthen collaboration and avoid duplications. As for the access to the affordable energy, our projects has also worked on the topic of grid interconnection for the variable renewable energy and also rural electrification and assessment on the energy access for some ASEAN member states like Cambodia. In general, working in clean energy topic in this region for several years, I would say to address the gap of regulatory frameworks and to strengthen investment environment, a cooperation among all the players, the government, private sector, academia, and international organizations are crucial, which is why I really appreciate this kind of panel discussion to exchange. This also was pointed out by Zulfikar, I guess, on the key stakeholder involvement on his last slide. I guess I'll stop here for a while and continue later if there's a question. Back to you, Zulfikar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very thankful to all the panelists, and I'll invite all panelists to turn on the camera now as we are going to enter the Q&A sessions. We are on time, which is, I think all of us did a great job in here. We have 25 or so minutes to have a Q&A sessions. And as I mentioned, hopefully we can have a lively discussion. So feel free if you think you want to add some perspective into some other panelists' answers. Yeah, so I think let me start the questions with our first panelist, Elis. You mentioned before that the electrification target might be difficult to reach in the short term, probably for Indonesia. And there's also a target of renewable energy 23%, surprisingly similar to our regional RE target. And so what would be your ideas on to fill this gap, both in electrification, but also in the renewable energy target? I mean, which is probably quite lagging behind, but you really need to accelerate for the next few years. What would be your ideas on these two topics? Well,
okay. We are in the midst of growing environmental issues such as climate change and also the declining of non-renewable energy resources. So now the renewable energy has become a necessity for the sustainability development can be achieved. Indonesia is blessed with renewable energy resources from hydropower, solar energy, wind, geothermal, and also bioenergy. The potential is spread in almost location of our archipelago countries. So in order to bring the electricity access, especially for the people in the area with limited or no access of electricity, we will be focusing in using local potential of renewable energy, as it is considered more efficient, effective, and also affordable. And also using local renewable potential, we have other advantage which we can engage people, society to get involved, which can by doing this, we hope that they have a more sense of ownership of the project. Also, by using renewable energy, we believe that we can deliver affordable and reliable and sustainable energy for the people. So it is in line between our target in achieving a 23% target of renewable energy with the SDG7 target.
Yeah, thank you, Elis. I think it's very interesting because you mentioned about how to build this localized solution, localized sources, but also the local people who will be, handling all of this renewable energy.
Yes.
One quick follow-up questions. Apologies for the other panelists. How about the clean cooking? What do you think about this?
Clean cooking, yes. In 2016, we, with supporting from World Bank, we have the Clean Stove Initiative program, but unfortunately, the program it's not runs quite well as expected because it's considered not efficient. It needs sometimes to ignite. So right now we consider to restart the program with some adjustment, and also government have another program to develop bioethanol based stove, which already we already have a pilot project in Gorontalo, if I'm not mistaken. And also, other than that, to boost, other than that, with which what makes the program is not run well is also because the LPG is subsidized by the government in order to make the biomass stove or bioethanol stove can be well known by the people. The government will introduce, will shift the commodity or product-based subsidy to people-centered based subsidy. By doing this, we hope that biomass or bioethanol or other clean cooking program can run well.
I think you mentioned the innovation in the new clean cooking, but also in understanding of the incentive and disincentive from the perspective will be very important. Moving quickly to Mary, probably Philippines and probably another ASEAN member states have like the same issues on giving access to this last mile, remote, rural, isolated areas. What would be your suggestions to address these issues?
Yeah, echoing the current United Nations report, it is true that for these remote off-grid communities and sometimes located in the vulnerable and conflict areas, the last mile of energy access must become the first mile to be addressed. This means that having access to clean and affordable electricity can enable poverty reduction and increase the quality of life for the residents of these areas. At the policy level, this means reassessing how rural electrification is defined, as I mentioned a while ago, and how energy access should not be treated as the end, rather than it should be seen as a means to achieve sustainable development. So, for example, the usual government priority for rural electrification is limited to power extension, which does not explicitly mention the provision of 24-hour electricity to off-grid areas. So having access to a reliable source of electricity can really help the poor rural communities to engage in more commercial and productive activities that in turn support livelihood communities and increase incomes. In terms of deployment of renewables in these areas, it is true that access to clean and renewable energy have tangible and intangible impacts to the communities. However, my study of various community-based renewable energy projects revealed that there's also a need to reevaluate what do we mean by successful renewable energy project, right? Aside from simply deploying the physical components of the solar PV system, it needs a long, tedious, and even tedious and continuous engagement with the communities for the intervention to be successful. This is where, and I think the other panelists would also say, is that we're building collaboration and partnerships among the local community players like NGOs, local government units, and private sector comes to play. That being said, in the case of the Philippines, the participation of local community organizations, NGOs, and LGUs would need to be institutionalized more in terms of rural electrification framework. So NGOs have been active in deploying a lot of small-scale renewable energy systems, especially for off-grid rural areas. Some of these NGOs are quite well versed with appropriate skills to implement community-based energy projects. On the other hand, for the formal institutions like the LGUs, they have been focal points in project delivery from the national government or international donor organizations. They provide access to community infrastructure or local processes, and increasingly in the Philippines, the collaboration of these community stakeholders actually help in creating successful models of microgrid projects in Palawan and in Romblon. These are some of the provinces in the Philippines. And I think lastly, on my point is that the less looked upon is the key role of informal institutions. So being with these communities for a while during the fieldwork makes me realize that religious organizations and the utilization of social capital among community members to encourage them to have more energy efficient activities. So this can be done through building and sustaining trust with the communities to ensure long-term adoption.
Thank you very much, Mary Ann. I do agree that it's not like, it might seem like we are moving the goalpost, but it's actually important as well to note that having access is basically the start, and also the means of all other SDGs achievement. And also very interesting and agree to note that the role of the NGOs, local communities, and probably like institutionalized this collaboration would be very important. Please allow me to jump a little bit to Rizky. After you're hearing these issues from the local governments, basically their needs, and as well the question will be they will definitely require international support, GIZ and other international agency in supporting their activities. So what do you think would be the challenges? Probably from your side you have your own priorities, but from the local you see they have this and that kind of like ideas. So what do you think will be the challenge in meeting them, the opportunities of meeting these donors and recipients, but overall, what will be your ideas from the perspective of international organizations on solving these SDG7 issues?
Yes, thank you very much for the great questions. Actually, it is indeed what we are doing right now. The GIZ and I believe also other international organizations like USAID, EA Arena, they also try to encourage SDG7, especially in the ASEAN region, which is one of the part of the region in the world that may drive the energy transition globally. In the future, even as I mentioned in my opening statement, that our activities align with the donor interests and also the APAEC, and of course can be aligned with SDG as well. Even Germany and also the EU now are increasing more and more focus to these regions, as that this region is important in order to combat climate change and to support the SDG. As for the challenge, actually little challenge happen on the matching the needs of the donors and the recipients, as they are mostly agreeing on the bigger pictures that promoting sustainable clean energy is a must, let's say, or energy transition is required to reach net zero emission in 2050. There might be, of course, some discussions required to adjust both parties' interests. Like, let's say, the donors would like to move from coal or no nuclear, or like the local parties would like to have more financing. But I guess it's are not big problems, are not a big challenge, as the sense to have the common goals are there, and they are having the same future goal in their head. I indeed actually would see the challenge lies on many actors on this topic in the regions, which might doing the same thing or the same topic to avoid duplication and to encourage collaboration. I think it would be great to have kind of like coordination platforms, which will help not only complementing each other, but also to reduce unnecessary effort or resource on doing things that have been done or maybe are being done by the others. So as far my experience, not so many challenge on meeting the requirement from both parties, but having many players might be tricky, and we need some kind of like a moderator there, like a middleman to monitor and to manage all are doing like complementing, not avoiding duplicating things. I think that's will be all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Rizky, for the very good answers. I'll move to Logan, and I saw there are some questions in the audience, so let's take that one first. From Mr. Dong mentioned that there is booming solar electricity last year in Vietnam, which is clearly highlighted by Logan, but there are some issues in transmission in the power grid on how to utilize this variable renewable energy. So what do you say about that, Logan?
Yeah, well, I mean, anytime a goal is vastly overachieved. So the goal was several thousand megawatts of solar in Vietnam by the end of 2020. And we're looking at something like 16 gigawatts. So you're talking about 8 times what the goal was. And there's a reason for that. Basically, the private sector, the way we work is we see an opportunity and we go after it. And so it's very much needed to make sure that your goal has sort of limitations behind it, because the 2,000 megawatts was not a hard cap. It didn't say that you can only do 2,000. It just said, that's our goal. Now here's the framework. And basically, many investors decided to go after that because of an attractive price. Now, as a consequence to that, they went forward under a contract in Vietnam with Vietnam Electricity that would allow for curtailment. In other words, if the grid had instability problems, that Vietnam Electricity could turn them down. And now they're doing that. And so basically a lot of investors took a bet, and some of them are losing that bet because they built too many in one place. And that's sort of a part of the game. So it's very important that in this framework, it's pictured out, how do you have slow, not slow, I shouldn't say that, but sustainable is the word, right? Sustainable growth instead of these boom bust cycles. And what we've seen in many markets, and including ASEAN, is that you'll have a huge boom and then a bust. And that's not good in terms of efficiency of business. It's not good in terms of any, it's just wasted resource. So for example, right now in wind power, we have something like 4,000 megawatts under construction in Vietnam, 4,000. And right now there's about 400 or 500 installed. So you're talking about 10 times the total amount of wind power currently in Vietnam is being built right now. So next year, you think it will grow on top of that? Probably not. And there's no word from the government as to what will come next. It's very important that this sort of clear goal of how we're going to get there is made and then followed in a sustainable curve, rather than built overnight and then nothing happens and then everyone leaves. And a corollary to this would be in the Philippines, there was a hard cap in 2014 for wind power, but there was more projects that had been developed than that cap. So the cap was 200 megawatts, and the government said, well, we are going to give a certain price to the first 200 megawatts, but any project after that, there's no word. And whoever finishes first, they will get it. So now you have 400 megawatts of projects, all spending hundreds of millions of dollars. Literally, whoever finishes first over a year will get it, right, and the other one doesn't. It's just not efficient for a business to kind of make that bet. And we'll make bets based on what projects we think can be developed, but to sort of literally gamble is not something that any business does well.
That's a very good insight, Logan.
Yeah, I think having this proper incentives is not only applied for the users, but also for the private sectors to really join in and push this SDG7 moving forward. Unfortunately, we are very limited in time. We only have 3 minutes, but I would like to hear a very short 20 seconds final messages from you according to your position, especially in escalating this SDG7 in the region. I would like to ask Marianne to start. Another 20 seconds, please.
Oh, 20 seconds. But, basically, probably, I think the main takeaway for me, especially for my study on community-based energy projects, is that capacity development for community-based or energy projects should not be limited to the technical know-how on operating and maintaining this renewable energy system. It should include or involve other skills for the communities to actually use the sustainable energy technologies. And there's really need to clearly define what we mean by electrification, and that would be a starting point for the regulatory framework and the national and local policies to follow.
Thank you very much. Bu Elis, please, 20 seconds, please.
It's quite hard. I just want to add that what I've been mentioned before, that government of Indonesia is trying hard to achieve the SDG7 goals, especially from my side, is to increase the use of renewable energy. And this during this pandemic, maybe we have much more. The challenge is much more higher. But by doing breakthrough, especially in Indonesia, we try to boost the use of co-firing biomass in order to boost the utilization of renewable energy. That's all. Thank you.
20 seconds from Rizky Fauzianto.
Thank you. I mean, from my side, I guess key stakeholder involvement, as you mentioned, are important, but also the management of stakeholder are important. So it's better that all parties, like private companies, policy, academia, international organizations, are sit there and discussing how we can encourage each other, and also working both ways, from high level on the policy and also the ground level on the technical, are also equally important. So I guess that's the takeaway from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. Last but not least, Logan, 20 seconds, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation, a great panel. I have to agree with what Rizky said, and I think that it's just the next 10 years is going to see a huge amount of change in this region. And it's going to be very much in the clean direction, and hopefully we can meet our targets if we work together. And I think that, you know, the government and private sectors working hand in hand, and all stakeholders, as Rizky said, coming up with a framework that is, you know, equal risk and equal reward on both sides is very important. But I'm confident that there's going to be a lot achieved, and I'm very much looking forward to see it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for ending this in a very positive note. I would like to call our very patient host, Benny Suryadi, to provide the close.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zulfikar and all 4 panelists. Thank you very much for sharing your valuable thoughts, which are very, very crucial in the shaping our effort to achieve the SDG7. We fully realize this is a continuous effort. Allow me to use the word from Logan again, that it should not be a boom and bust. It's a continuous effort, a collaboration with everyone. That's why we at the ASEAN Centre for Energy, through many projects that we are running, particularly the ASEAN Climate Change and Energy Project, is conducting a series of studies, even collaboration, in pursuing the goal of the SDG7 as well as the SDG13. So feel free to further explore our social media website to learn more about ACE and our program. And last point that I'd like to share, that a kind of invitation. So can you go to the next slide, that if you are a researcher or on the energy and the climate change issue, you may also want to join our network, the ASEAN Researcher Network on the Energy and the Climate Change. This information can also be retrieved from our website. Then to end our event today, allow me to convey once again and finally the highest appreciation to all of you who are participate in our event today. We look forward for a collaboration again in the future. So thank you and a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.